الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. أما بعد. Today is the fourth lecture, so we're hitting just in the middle of the 8 weeks span of this course. I see we have some newcomers today. Hopefully we can, get the grip of what we're doing as we go along, inshallah, today. Just a couple of notes that I want to point out. Number one, regarding the format, and I guess this point in particular I would have to repeat if other people come, inshallah, during the session. The format of the setting is that we have an hour or maybe a little bit more, depending on the material that we have to cover, and then we have the period of questions and answers. So if you have any question, I'll just ask you to jot it down and put it or leave it until the end of the explanation, inshallah. So this is one point. Another is attendance, and I'll be passing out a paper, but after a little bit, inshallah, there'll be a paper for the guys and another one for the girls, inshallah, to jot down their names and so forth. I had two other things that I wanted to talk about. Your academic backgrounds. I'm kind of interested to know your backgrounds, your past studies or your current studies. So if you can write that down next to your name, like your name is so and so, and I'm studying whatever. You don't have to put it in a sentence, just the field that you're studying. If you want to put down university or college, feel free to do so. Other things, we'll mention them, inshallah, as we go along. 3 more points, not regarding logistics, but regarding the content itself. One of them is, I did a really ugly mispronunciation in the beginning of the previous session, and if you guys remember, I came a little bit like some time late, and I was trying to go through things quickly, so I said Allahumma allimuna, and it should be Allahumma allimna ma yanfa'una. Alright? So that nobody noticed this from those people who saw the videos, but I just wanted to point that out. And the weird thing is, I noticed the mistake and I tried to correct it, and because I was trying to go quickly through the material, because we were running short out of time back then. So that's the reason. What else? The 2 other points, one of them is about the 2 months period. If you guys remember last time, we talked how Imam Zarnuji made reference that a student or a learner can take a period of 2 months to search or to look for the suitable learning environment that suits him, whether the shaykh or the content or the studies that he's trying to seek. And if we would put this in context, in modern day terms, this would be something like the period. It's not really applicable to the Egyptian society or the Egyptian milieu, but it applies, for example, in America, where they take a period of usually the last semester or even the beginning semester, the first semester of 12th grade, the senior year in high school. They take that period of time to look at colleges and universities and start looking for requirements of admission. And sometimes they go through some sort of college orientation, they visit the campus, they see how things are. So we're still, Egypt, we're still, catching up in these things. They might be available in private universities, but public universities, or those who go through the admission of public university systems, such privilege unfortunately is not offered. So this is just one point I wanted to put this piece of information that Imam Zarnuji has mentioned into modern day context. Another point, which I think could be a mistranslation, depending on which edition the translator used. On page 24, if you could turn on to that. And this is related to the notion of the definition of knowledge. Because you asked about the definition of knowledge, right?
How can we define it?
Yeah, how can we define knowledge, exactly. So you'll find there's the last or before last sentence that starts with al-fiqh. You see it has this italic on the first paragraph on page 24. You see the sentence that starts al-fiqh, right? Do you see it? Yes? No?
No.
The first paragraph. The second one starts by saying Abu Hanifa said, right? The one before that, the sentence that starts not by al-fiqh but the one before it, as for commenting on matters of learning, it is a secondary means through which the nature of a propounded subject may become clear. Did you find that sentence? Yes, you found it? The guys? Did you find it? Did you find it? Yes? You found it? Could you point it out for me? Okay, got it? Alright. This sentence in the Arabic version of the text, of course the original version of the text, says وَأَمَّا تَفْسِيرُ الْعِلْمِ فَهُوَ صِفَةٌ يَتَحَلَّى بِهَا الْمَذْكُورُ لِمَنْ قَامَتْ بِهِ. And if we visit again the English translation, it says, as for commenting on matters of learning, it is a secondary means through which the nature of a propounded subject may become clear. I don't find this matching the Arabic version. What Imam al-Zarnuji is saying in the Arabic text about what knowledge is, he's describing knowledge as an attribute, as a personal trait, as part of your character. And if we said, as we mentioned various times, that learning is something that distincts or is a essential or a vital trait in the core of human beings. So he defines knowledge as a trait. He says صِفَةٌ لِمَنْ قَامَتْ بِهِ. So he defines knowledge as something that becomes part of your personality, becomes part of your identity. See, before you know something, and then when you move from this unconscious or in awareness about any given topic or subject, and then you move into a conscious understanding or recognition of a certain field or a certain area of knowledge, there is this kind of cognitive shift you went through. In the beginning, you know nothing about, let's say, behavioral economics, and all of a sudden you heard about this topic, this field, and then you start, researching about it and looking into it, and perhaps seeking an introductory manual or a book that talks for beginners about this area of study. So now you have moved cognitively and consciously from being unaware about a certain topic or a certain field into being aware. This kind of awareness is very related to knowledge. I mean, if we want to define knowledge in the terms of logic, it becomes kind of difficult. And even scholars have talked about this. Can we define knowledge or not? Some of them believe that knowledge is too apparent to be defined. But we can say that it revolves around the notion of awareness, becoming aware. This notion of being unconscious about something and then becoming conscious about it. And the magnificent part about what Imam al-Zarnuji has mentioned, that this becomes a trait. Knowledge has this kind of powerful tool in the person, him or herself. There has been some preliminary studies nowadays that perhaps information or knowledge is passed through genes. This is something in the fields of genetics is still to be researched. I mean, it's still a young field of research, but yet they're looking into this notion of is information inherited? Do people pass information down from one generation to another or not by means of genetics? I mean, this is something that still people are looking into it. But the whole idea is that knowledge becomes part of you. See, your knowledge is different than mine, is different than your classmates or your learning mates and so forth. Every single individual has a different perceptual experience through knowledge and learning and information processing and facts that you know and experiences that you went through. So if we take a look at learning as something that defines human beings, and it's something that we do all along, all our lives, but either we do it correctly or we do it in a false fashion, or we learn things that we need, or perhaps we learn things that we don't need. But eventually, you're continuously in a learning experience. You don't stop learning, whether you choose or not. So the point is, learning and knowledge defines who you are. What you learn defines who you are. How you learn defines who you are. Why you learn defines who you are. The way you practice what you learn also defines who you are. So learning is very connected to the core of yourself, to your identity, to your personality, you understand, to your character. And this has an evolving nature as well, because your character, I mean, learning is perceptual. Learning comes, time by time, step by step, and so forth. You don't have a wholesome understanding of things. You grasp things by the process of learning itself, by going through certain steps. So the way you learn touches the way you evolve as a person. Your personality changes from one day to another, and from one year to another, and from one span to another, and so forth. So this is, I think, was a very brilliant point by Imam Zarnuji, that knowledge is a trait, is an attribute in our characters. And of course, the better quality the knowledge you have, then the better character you have as well. I mean, see, we can always define knowledge by being, consolidated and solid knowledge, and we can say scattered information, and we say this is useful knowledge and this is not useful knowledge, and so forth. These descriptions that we attach to knowledge, they're also attached to your personality. You understand? So the more you work on learning in a better way and learning what you really need for your current condition, as he has mentioned, and we have talked about several times, al-hal, the current condition or the current state, then the better person you'll be after all. Alright? So this is part of using learning and the field of learning how to learn as a gateway or as a key for self-development in general. Okay? So this was the second note that we wanted to point out. Now we move on to chapter 5. We have covered so far, alhamdulillah, the introduction and the first 4 chapters, and now we're up to chapter 5. And this is, we'll not go into chapter 6 today. Today is only for chapter 5, and next Saturday, inshallah, will be for chapter 6 only.
Saturday or Friday?
Saturday.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it says chapter 5 on industriousness, perseverance, and acidity in the pursuit of learning. See, this chapter is about the role of character in learning. Alright? And this field has been gaining a lot of momentum recently. There has been even a course on Coursera called Teaching Character, Creating Positive Classrooms. It was by Relay Graduate School of Education, which is in New York. And they have provided this course through the platform Coursera, and I had the privilege of taking that course, and alhamdulillah, I think I aced it. I got like 100% in it. And this course really touched upon many of the aspects and milestones that Imam Zarnuji has mentioned in this chapter. There has been a book that documented some of the work that Relay Graduate School had illustrated through their course. This book is called How Children Succeed: Grit, Curiosity, and the Hidden Power of Character. And this is by Paul Tuff, who's a journalist and who's a writer. He wrote for the New York Times, I believe. And this book has been translated into 25 languages. And he talks about the role of character in learning. All right, how children succeed, grit, curiosity, and the hidden power of character. There has been other works in this area of study, the role of character in learning. I mean, we talked before about growth mindset, or the notion of mindset in learning by Carol Dweck from Stanford. There's also the famous Marshmallow Test, or Marshmallow Experiment by Walter Mischel. And recently his book came out, late 2014. It's called The Marshmallow Test, right? And he has been famous for that experiment. I would suggest you go on YouTube and write The Marshmallow Test. And the whole idea of it, they would have a child below the age of 5. He or she would enter a room. They don't know that they're being videotaped, as we can see from the videos. And they would give them this small plate with a piece of white marshmallow. And the direction would be by the person observing the experiment, or doing the experiment, would be, you have one marshmallow. If you wait, if you don't eat it and wait until I come back, you will get another one. So you'll have the 2. You can eat both of them. But if you eat it now, or during the time I'm outside of the room, you will not get another one. And you will find how children act in different, funny ways, and they try to lick the marshmallow and smell it and sniff around it. And some of them try to put themselves to sleep. Others kept, singing and doing things to kind of, get their focus or attention away from the marshmallow. Yeah, others tried to taste it. Some of them just ate it, directly. And they had sometimes 2 kids, like brothers or sisters together and so forth. What he did, Walter Mischel, in this experiment that was in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s, he did this experiment, and it has been, done in several sessions and so forth. What he did, he tracked those children, their academic performance and their, well-being in general. He found that those kids that were able to hold themselves from eating the marshmallow, to delay this gratification, all right, and wait for the second one, those kids who have that willpower or self-control, on average, they have better academic performance. On average, they have less body weight than those who ate the marshmallow. So on average, their flourishing in life was much better. So what he was trying to conclude out of this, that there's a relationship between self-control, willpower, and well-being. And this has many applications, whether in child rearing or in learning and schooling and so forth. There has been one criticism to his experiment. He says you're not measuring willpower and patience and self-control. You're measuring obedience in children. Some of them obey and others don't. But even if they have to obey, or actually some of them have the power of going through this obedience phase in order to get a reward, this tells something about their self-control as well. All right, this was kind of around the notions that he has mentioned in his reply to this criticism. And you can read about it and watch different videos on YouTube or read about it online. So this was the works of Paul Tough, and we mentioned Carol Dweck, and I will mention it again today, inshallah, and Walter Mischel. See, Az-Zarnuji also discusses this notion of character and learning, and he puts things in context. You will find him in the beginning of the chapter talking about how perseverance and grit and resilience should be not only in the learner, him or herself, but also in the parent and in the teacher, which is something that has been promoted in the book. how children succeed. And something that has been promoted by Carol Dweck also in Mindset. She's talking about the role of the teachers and the parents in how children perceive non-cognitive factors that affect learning, all right, such as notions of character and so forth. You'll find them in the last three sentences, the last 3 lines in the first paragraph. It says, "It is said, industriousness of 3 kinds of people is essential in the pursuit of science and learning. These people are the student, the teacher, and the father." So he's putting the family and the learning environment or the school system in context of character education or the role of character in learning. Very similar to what they're doing in modern day. You cannot foster character development in children without having an alignment between what you're trying to cultivate in them with the attitude of the parents and the teachers and the school environment in general. There has been also, as I said, there has been massive research in this area. Also, the University of Chicago, they have done through a consortium of school research, I believe. They have done a research on the non-cognitive factors and how they affect the school performance. So all in all, there has been massive research in this area nowadays. Part of the scholars or the researchers that talk about this area of character, they do experiments and they do research and studies with children coming from less developed countries and countries that go through devastating circumstances. You know, children that go through wars and children that go through, you know, different kinds of problems, and they see how some of them aspire and flourish when they are given the opportunity and the chance to learn and to be given academic assistance and academic and education and so forth. They study their resilience. How do young children stay resilient no matter of, you know, difficult adversities in life? And what they do, they take them as models, and then they see how they can, you know, replicate what they have done with children living in developed countries and so forth. And this is something for us in Egypt. We have certain communities that go through adversities, and we have neighboring countries that go through adversities as well. We have this chance to study, to learn. How do people come from communities that are suffering economically and socially, and yet some of them, you know, go beyond expectations, and they rise high above others who are giving all facilities and all options and all alternatives. So this is something for us to reflect on. The whole idea is how to cultivate stamina in children or in the learner. As we have said, the beginner in any field is like a child in life. You know, if you are a beginner in any kind of study, you're like that area of study is life for a child. You understand? So many of the studies that are done for children, we can usually, not always, but we can usually learn from them to apply them to beginners and learners. We've mentioned Carol Dweck, and we keep on mentioning her, and her work is really magnificent on growth mindset. And then she moved also on combining this mindset studies on something called tenacity. Being tenacious, which is in Arabic, salb, being strong. And they're talking about how academic tenacity is very important. And salb, being tenacious, is different than in Arabic, ta'assub, or being, you know, extreme or radical in your point of view. They're two distinct notions. being tenacious is having this kind of determination, perseverance, persistence, grit, resilience in study. All right. So they're also talking about how they can cultivate this in learners, and it's not only like school activities or classroom management tips. They talk about even the talk, the rhetoric, the words, the vocabulary that is being used in schools, whether to talk about achievements in the sense of intelligence, inherited intelligence or intrinsic intelligence in children, or should we talk to children that they succeed because of their performance and how much effort they put. And of course the second one is what brings resilience and what cultivates persistence and so forth. And I made this kind of acronym, and you can look up these words. You might find that somebody else has coined it. But when I was reading and preparing some of the vast notions that I learned about before for this class, you find 4 characters that we can put them together in a word. The word would be PERT, P-E-R-T. And the P-E stands for perseverance and persistence. You can put it as P-A squared if you want. And the R stands for resilience, and the T stands for tenacity. So these are 4 core attributes and characters that any learner needs to succeed. And you find, of course, the whole chapter 5 is full of these notions that Imam al-Zarnuji talk about. There has been other works by, for example, Martin Seligman from the University of Pennsylvania, and he talked about something called PERMA. And this model of PERMA is applied in organizations, not only for individuals, not only for learners and children and so forth. And the PERMA stands for positive emotion. This is the P of PERMA. And E stands for engagement. And R stands for relationships, M for meaning, and A for achievement. And he takes each one of those core ideas and talks about them and how they affect the flourishing of a person or an individual, whether a child or an adult. And he wrote a book called Flourish, in which he presents his studies in that. Martin Seligman has been known also for a long study in character and in classes of strengths and virtues. The short for it is CSV. What he has done, he has talked about the classes of virtues, and this is something is found by Imam al-Ghazali in Ihya Ulumuddin, by the way. Imam al-Ghazali, in the Revival of Religious Sciences, has talked about this notion of the classes of virtues. So, again, we find connections between al-Turath, or the Islamic tradition, and the modern day concerns and ideas that they have been looking into. Martin Seligman has also done a great research in something called learned helplessness. This is an important notion. That many people who talk about this idea of learning how to learn, they talk about learning how to learn, and they talk about, for example, some of the obstacles for learning, like procrastination. But they don't talk about learned helplessness. And Martin Seligman talked about this. Learned helplessness was originally done through experiments on animals who are being put in adversities and difficult situations, and the experiments are designed that they have repeated failures, that they don't succeed in coming out of the difficulties that are designed for them. So they keep on repeating their failure again and again and again and again. Eventually, they don't try. Eventually, even if they are given a road to escape out of the difficulty, they don't choose to go through it. So learned helplessness, that a person learns his helplessness, his inability to change, through a series of failing experiences. that go through, experience repeated failures, develops this kind of mindset of being, of learned helplessness. And the person learns to prefer, eventually, futility, meaning everything is pointless. It's kind of like a nihilist, philosophy, that everything has no objective meaning. There's no reason to try. There's no point out of this. I am going through hardship because I have to go through it. There's nothing to look for. There's an inability to rationalize. Why am I suffering? Why am I going through these things? So you know what? This is something that's part of life. I don't have to counter it. I don't have to struggle. I don't have to strive. I don't have to exert effort, because I know from past experiences, I learned I'm helpless. You understand? This is the whole notion of learned helplessness, and a huge study by Martin Seligman in this area. A tip or a technique in how to overcome learned helplessness is to stage micro revolts, so to speak. Do small but significant choices. So a person who has learned to be helpless, one of the things that they can do is do small micro events that are significant and involve some sort of decision making or choices. Like, paint your room. Do something that is different, and it's minute, it's not life changing, but it has some kind of significance. The way you see the color of your room from now on will change. So there is some kind of change. And take this as an example, this as an idea, and do several things, whether in relationships or education. If you fail to go through college or something, take a course, a small course, or attend a workshop, and so forth. Do these small, incremental, perceptual, and gradual accomplishments to come out of this learned helplessness. See, learned helplessness is developing the habit of being helpless. So in order to unlearn a habit, you have to use the same mechanism that you learned this habit. That through it you learn the habit, which is perceptual and gradual and repeated events that have some sort of reward. Alright? And this develops this kind of motivation to change it. Another person who did studies in this regard is Angela Duckworth, also from the University of Pennsylvania. And her work is on grit. The ability to persevere and go through projects in a continuity, in continuous form. That some people, they don't have the breadth. They can't go through a marathon, for example. So grit is dealing with learning and studying and education in the sense of marathons. That you wait a long time to get something, to achieve something. So the whole idea of grit is doing that. You find, for example, and this is related somehow to procrastination. See, do you know why we get so attached to handheld devices and smartphones and stuff? And we use them, and we eventually become procrastinators because of these things. Because what they do, you do small things, and then, small and little effort, and you get reward for it. Instant reward. And instant reward, affects your dopamine levels. So you repeat something and you get a reward. You repeat it, you get a reward. You repeat it again, you get a reward, and then you develop the habit. You understand? This is also with procrastination, which is, in contradiction with the point of delaying gratification and waiting. If you think about it, if I wait to study for a midterm that's still coming in a week, there is a delayed reward. But if I use a handheld device right now, once I enter Facebook, I get this, dopamine thing. So, and by doing that, there's the addiction or the habit of using these things, arise. So one way to, fight that is through grit and other character attributes. Angela Duckworth, what she did in her research and what she discovered in her research, that notions or the attributes and traits in character like grit can be more predictive and have a stronger predictive validity for success more than IQ and beyond IQ even. So sometimes the role of character is much more important than the cognitive abilities. Yes, they are required, but if we're talking about two people of almost the same IQ, a person who has the grit has the stronger side. And even if one of them is lower than the other in IQ, but has an extreme abilities or strong abilities in grit and perseverance and persistence and so forth, can go far beyond that person who has some sort of an IQ level that is higher than him. All right. You find Imam Zarnuji on page 40 talks in the end of page 40 and the beginning of page 41. And he says, he who aspires to memorizing, the end of page 40, the last three sentences. He who aspires to memorizing all the books of Muhammad ibn Hassan and adds to what? To the effort of memorization. And adds to this ambition, industriousness, and perseverance, will clearly remember. See, he's connecting the idea of memory with the role of character. Note, he's not even talking about success only. He's talking about memorization. How you can improve your recall by having better character traits. Will clearly remember the greater part of these books, or at least a half. But if one has the most extreme aspiration, great ambitions, but does not have industriousness, or has industriousness but does not aspire high, knowledge comes to one only in a small amount. That person who doesn't have this character trait would not gain a lot of knowledge. So now he's talking about how this is detrimental for learning to have grit, perseverance, industriousness, persistence, and so forth. Same notion that Duckworth has done, and she has a lab of her own, the Duckworth lab at the University of Pennsylvania. She's doing the same research, she's doing this research in the same field, the same notion that Imam Zarnuji has talked about back then. So the whole idea is developing grit. If we want to summarize it, is to develop a sustained focus and application of talent. How to sustain your energy and your abilities for a long time. And by the way, the research of Duckworth was one of the important studies that Relay Graduate School of Education based their course in Coursera on, and also a network of American public schools called KIPP or KIPP. They depend on the work of Seligman and Duckworth and so forth. Another point, you find Imam Zarnuji on page 42. The paragraph that starts by, it is said further. In the top half of the page. Do you find it? Alright. He says, it is said further, laziness comes from the paucity of meditation on the virtues of knowledge and its merits. Hence, it is necessary. Note his indicative terms. Hence, it is necessary when embarking on study to bestir oneself for the acquisition of knowledge, and prod oneself to industriousness and perseverance in the meditation of the merits of learning. For truly knowledge remains while riches disappear, and so forth. So what he's doing, he's connecting this kind of meditation and reflection about the importance of character and learning in your learning experience. The more you have positive self-talk and more reflection on the value of what you're doing, the better you'll be motivated, and the easier you can develop, notions of perseverance or traits of perseverance, persistence, and resilience, or the